We're going to do a demo, transaction demo, and then we're going to, as Tom mentioned, go over any audience questions at the end. Okay, so what is it? It's a browser-based productivity suite that includes modules such as requisitioning, vendor invoices. You can do employee time and expenses, and there are a variety of other different modules. As I mentioned, today we're going to be doing requisitions. Okay, it interfaces with a bunch of Microsoft Dynamics applications such as Great Plains, Solomon, AX, and NAV. The demonstration that we're going to be going over today is going to be linked to Great Plains, but if you're using other products, basically RecLogic is still going to look the same. It's just that maybe the back-end processes may be different. Another feature and benefit is that it automates your purchasing requisitioning process. It really enables you to go paperless, and it really helps to control and organize your whole procurement process. It's a very highly customizable product. You can have non-Dynamics users use the application. So for instance, if you need people to approve requisitions but don't necessarily need them to have a Dynamics license, this would be a perfect fit. And you have a lot of visibility into the transactions, both in the RecLogic product itself as well as Great Plains, or excuse me, as Dynamics. So in today's example that we're going to do a requisition, excuse me, and that consists of us entering and submitting a requisition. We're going to approve the requisition. We're going to create a purchase order. I'm going to show you how to receive the shipment for the PO. And then lastly is posting the receipt in Microsoft Dynamics. So when we get to RecLogic in just a few minutes, first in the transaction demo is the requisition itself. So we're going to enter some header information, line details. We can upload documents if we wish to, so that really enables us to go paperless. If you want to scan something and upload it and attach it to the requisition, by all means you can do that. We can look at the routing and status information for the requisition so that we can see exactly who it's going to be routed to. We'll submit it for approval. And then you have email notifications. You'll notice that you'll see that RecLogic is very focused on email notifications. The approver gets notifications that he or she has something to approve. The requester gets email notifications, so it's very, very visible, and it allows you to see a lot of the flow. Approving the requisition, as I mentioned, the approver can receive an email notification. The approver can review and approve it, so you can elect to edit, change, or add comments to an approval. You can actually reject a document too. And then finally, we're going to actually approve that requisition. The next step would be to create a PO. And we would go into the buyer review and selection area, and we're going to filter the criteria so that we can find our requisition to create a PO. There's a feature to generate one PO per vendor. So if we have multiple requisitions, and if those multiple requisitions need to go to one vendor, you can choose to generate one PO per vendor. Then we're going to actually create the PO. Then we can print and view the PO. And lastly, if we need to, we can email the PO to our vendor. Next is to receive our PO. So once we've received our product, we can filter the criteria to find the requisition. If our vendor has sent an invoice along with the shipment, we can choose to make it a shipment invoice so that in Dynamics we can see not only the receipt, but we can create the invoice. Or if the product has only come with the shipment itself and no invoice, you can choose to do just the shipment in RecLogic. We can receive the full shipment or partial quantities. We can upload attachments, and finally we can receive it. Okay, so all that I just mentioned in the previous slides occurs in RecLogic. Once we receive a shipment, then we would either come to, excuse me, we would either come to Great Plains to review the receiving's transaction entry, or we can go into SL, and again, I'm just showing GP and SL here. We can go in here and review the transaction, and then we can post and release our batches. And once we do that, our inventory quantities are updated in our respective ERP systems. So, you know, I said a lot there, but it really is a seamless process. We can really make it go paperless, and it's very flexible in how we set up the application. Okay, so before we do that, we are going to go into our demo. Okay, so I am in the RecLogic application right now. As I mentioned, it is web-based. So I am in the interface here as the Angelo Glyptis user. It shows me the date and what company that I'm logged into. I have my menu bar going across the top, and depending on my access rights, I will see various options in my menu. And you notice here in the middle of my page, I have a section called Your Recent Transactions, and it shows me 15 of my most recent transactions, showing me the document numbers, who the requester was, description, and so on and so on. Okay. A lot of the information that you see in many of the windows in RecLogic are customizable, which doesn't need a PhD degree to do this, for the most part, but it is pretty customizable. So in our demonstration today, we're going to be doing our requisition transaction. So I'm going to go to that window. And as I mentioned in the PowerPoint slide, we have in our requisition window, we have a header section up above, and then down below we can add our lines to our requisition. We can have one line or we can have multiple lines. It really depends on your requisition. So I'm going to create a new requisition here, and you'll notice that there's blue fields in my header. The blue color represents required fields, and these are customizable. I can set various fields to be required. So I'm just going to enter a description here, and as I mentioned, I can upload attachments onto my header by uploading a document. Okay, I can just browse out to that document and attach it here. I can also write notes, general notes, notes to vendor, notes to buyer, excuse me, in the header area. And just as I can upload and add notes to the header, I can also do it on the line item, and I'll show that to you in a second. So I'm going to create a new line, and it opens up the bottom portion of my window so that I can start entering my information. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick an item. Doesn't really matter for right now what I choose. And you'll notice that there are these two stars here called My Favorites for item ID and for vendor. These are really cool buttons that you can use. If you're a requester that uses some common items or vendors in your list, you can just click on that and you can see your favorite list. So rather than going into the lookup window to see all my items, this is a pretty exhaustive list here. Rather than searching, doing it that way, I can just choose to use my favorites button. Okay, so that's a really useful tool. And so I can enter some various information. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have the blue required fields. So I'm just going to enter some information here. I'm going to make this for $150. I'm going to choose my vendor. Again, I'm going to choose my favorites. And I'm going to choose this vendor here. My inventory site ID, it defaults in this particular case. I'm going to choose my GL account. And I'm going to choose this one here. And as I mentioned, we can upload attachments on the line item as well as notes down here, as we did for the header up here. So at this point, I can save this item. I can do save and new, or I can cancel this. So for right now, I'm just going to say save this item. And you see various tabs here. I can look at this. I'm currently looking at the information in summary. I can look at it in detail. If I go over to the routing tab, it shows me that the next person in line to approve this is somebody called Abe Lincoln, and I can actually see the status of my transaction. It looks like it's been created and nothing else has happened. Okay? So at this point, I've completed my header section and my line item section. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. So currently, my status is not submitted. And as soon as I click submit, it's going to ask me if I want to submit it. I'm going to say OK. And here it says that it's been submitted, and it's giving me a warning related to the budget. It's saying that line item, budget, admin, hardware is over by the budget amount of excuse me, $2,177.48. And I'll show you where we can get some additional details in just a minute. So I'm just going to click OK, and you see that my status is now routing. I'm going to log out as the Angelo Glyptis user and log in as a Lincoln. And while I'm doing that, I can also look in Outlook and see that my email notifications have come through. So it's showing me that this user has submitted this transaction. So this is what I was mentioning before in the PowerPoint slide about the email notifications. Really, really helpful. So I'm logged in as Abe Lincoln, and Abe Lincoln sees in his interface here his approval queue. So as the Glyptis user, we saw your recent transactions. Well, it just so happens that A. Lincoln is also an approver, so he wants to go in and look at the transaction that just came through from A. Glyptis for $150. It says that it's routing. So when I select the transaction, I can virtually see basically the requisition that came through from A. Glyptis, and I can see here there's a button up here for review completed. I'll hold off on that in just a second. And you see here by default, there's a checkbox here that's ready for it to be approved. If I want to reject it, I can just uncheck it and click Review Completed, and the transaction will actually be rejected and go back to A. Glyptis, letting him know that it's been rejected. We're not going to do that for right now. But we can look at this document here. We can see that there's a couple of different little icons here. There's the over budget. This was that little pop-up message that we saw that A. Glyptis got when he submitted it. But also this little dollar sign. If I click it, we can drill down into the budget inquiry window. And just give it a second here. And it shows me the budget information for the year 2013 for this budget ID for the GL account that we coded it to. And you can see some budget information here and some the actual information as well as any amounts available. So I can see here the available amount is 0, so that tells me that it's over. And it's showing me by month, and it's it's summing all my columns here. So this is a really helpful tool related to budgeting. Okay, the approver can, depending on settings that you set up in RecLogic, the approver can add some information. If the approver needs to add a line item or change a cost, he or she can do that. But we're not going to get into that right now, but you do have that flexibility in RecLogic. So as the approver, I've reviewed this. Everything looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and click Review Completed. And now I can see, if I just log out for just a second and go back in as Aglyptus, it's going to show me that transaction for $150 has been approved. We're going to log back in as a Lincoln so that a Lincoln can create the PO. That's our next step. Our first step was entering the requisition and submitting it. Number 2 was approving it, and we're at the third step here of creating the PO. So I'm going to go up to Buyer Tasks and go into my Buyer Review and Selection window. And this is the filter criteria that I was mentioning, that you can find the document that we were just looking at. I know that it's document number 10341. And I'm going to apply the filter to try to find it, and there it is. Okay. And again, it's showing me the summary information related to the requisition. It shows to me on the left-hand side that it's been approved. If I had any attachments or any notes to this requisition, the notes would be, instead of white, they'd be yellow. And again, I have my over budget little symbol here, and I am ready to create a PO. As I mentioned before, you have this generate one PO per vendor. If I had multiple requisitions in this window going to Ace Travel, I could click on that box, and what it would do when I would do create purchase orders, it would bundle all those requisitions into one PO for that vendor. So I'm going to create the PO, and it's going to prompt me if I want to do that. I'm going to say yes. And when it brings me to a window, and it says that PO number 2197 has been created for this vendor, and so on. Now, behind the scenes, if I was to toggle over to Great Plains or SL, I could find this PO, because RecLogic has now spoken to, it's now talking to the ERP system. Okay, so if I want to view that PO, I can do that. And here's my purchase order report. This is using the Crystal Reports interface. This is a customizable report. So if there's some fields on here that you see that you don't need, or some fields that you wish you could see on here, we can definitely customize that. Okay, we can also email this PO. So if we need to, we could send it to Greg Powell at a travel company, and by default it knows it's coming from a Lincoln. And here is the body of my email, and I could just send the email, and that's it. If I choose not to, or if I need to fax it or something like that, obviously I can just print it out and fax it over to them. Okay, so we've created that PO. Now, a span of time has gone by, and we've received our shipment. And now we're going to go into receive our PO. So we're going to go to Transactions, Receiving. And again, we have some filter criteria. We're going to find our document number, 10341. And here, I mentioned in my PowerPoint that you can either do a shipment if I didn't receive an invoice, or I could do a shipment invoice if I did receive it. I'm just going to do shipment here, and I'm going to do apply filter. And here's my PO. It shows me my quantity requested and quantity remaining. I can partially receive a PO. So if I originally ordered 10 and only 5 came in, I can put in that quantity received. and the remaining quantity this PO would remain open for the remaining quantity. So for right now, I'm just going to say 1, and all we do here is do save, and it just says the process completed successfully. And similar to that screenshot that I had in my PowerPoint, if I go into my ERP system, and in this case Great Plains, I'm just going to go to purchasing batches, and I'm going to find my requisition here. It's called REQ 100021. I created that prefix when I set up the system. So if I just go and view the transaction, I can find the shipment number. There it is. It all brings it nicely over from RecLogic. I can review my distributions, and I'm ready to post. When I post it, my inventory is updated, and that's it. So from a really high level, I've shown you how to enter and submit a requisition. We've created that. We've approved it. We've created the PO. We've received the PO. And then we've gone into the ERP system to show you the receipt entry that it makes from RecLogic, and we can go ahead and post it. I am almost finished here, but one more thing that I wanted to show you was another cool feature in RecLogic. Similar to requisitions, you have a feature called punch-out catalogs. Okay, and sorry, I need to log in as the Aglyptus user. I'm going to go back to punch-out catalogs. And what a punch-out is if you're doing business with let's say like a Staples, an Office Max, a WB Mason, a pretty big company that offers this punch-out that you do shopping on, you can actually configure RecLogic to do your shopping, initiating it from RecLogic and taking it out to their website. So I'm just going to connect to WB Mason in our case. Right now it's connecting to WB Mason, and it took me right out there. It tells me that who I am, welcome Angelo Glyptis of WB Mason, punch-out test account, and it shows my shopping cart, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm ready to do my shopping. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to find something here. And I'm going to buy a bunch of these. I'm going to buy, what are these? They are wood rollers. I'm going to add them to my cart. And you see that it's been added to my cart, and I'm done. So at this point, I feel that I finished, and I'm going to head and click checkout. And when I do that, it takes me out of the WB Mason website, and it brings me back into RecLogic, and it automatically created a requisition based on the shopping that I did on the WB Mason website. And at this point, I'm ready to submit it, just as I did in our other example. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through the process of doing that. Again, I just showed that to you just a few minutes ago. But I just wanted to show you that that's a really cool feature. You can ask any of your vendors if they do punch out, and if they do, it just needs a little bit of configuration between us and the vendor to have that all configured in RecLogic, and it's a really useful tool to utilize. So with that, we've come up to 2:30. I've shown you a real high-level demonstration of a requisition and kind of like the workflow of a requisition. And I wanted to turn it over to anyone that has any questions. Tom, can we do that?
Yep. Okay. I was just going to say thanks. Thanks a lot, Angela. That was a great presentation, and we're going to leave the lines open here. If anybody has a question, you can type it into the question box. You can use the hand-raising function. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the lines here as well if anybody just wants to ask their question. But thanks once again, Angelo, for that.
No problem.
bear with me for a moment here. We're going to get everybody off of mute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, you can either feel free to ask them now, or if you want to go ahead and type it into the question box. Everybody's just still taking everything in, I guess. All right. Well, if we have no questions, again, we will be sending a copy of the recording out to everybody. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time today. And as Angela's popping up on the screen here. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom. We will, as Tom mentioned at the top of the presentation, we do have a couple more RecLogic webinars over the course of the next month or so. On June 18th, we have Understanding Vendor Invoices and Approval Workflow, very similar to what we did today. For requisitions, we're going to be going over vendor invoices. And on July 16th, we're going to be using the tool for importing requisitions and invoices in RecLogic.
All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, again, thank you, everybody, for taking time out today. And we will be sending a copy of the recording out to everybody. And if there are any follow-up questions, please feel free to contact us. Okay. All right. And with that, we will close out our session. And thank you once again, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.